To discuss it more, we're joined by Dr. Shuki Friedman. He's the Director General of the Jewish People Policy Institute. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Friedman. Look, there's significant pushback inside the coalition on this. We've seen prominent members of the governing coalition, of the Likud party itself, emerge, with their criticism. So we see some principles and values on display here, not just politics solely driving this issue. But I'm, laying this out from the, serving tax-paying citizens' perspective, those who largely have given it all to the country in these last 2 years of war. This community doesn't seem to be coming around to that side of the issue in any way, shape, or form, the ultra-Orthodox. So where are we headed as a country?
First of all, it should be emphasized that this draft law is practically not going to bring to the army even a single ultra-Orthodox, because it not aim to draft the ultra-Orthodox, but to maintain the coalition, in my perspective. And I think this perspective is shared by those from the coalition that object to the law, but also from everybody that goes through the law and can realize that the law doesn't really put any sanctions on the ultra-Orthodox that not going to the army, and in practice, it's bypassing the duty of the ultra-Orthodox to prescribe to the army, and therefore, in my perspective, this law is a threat to the future of the state of Israel.
Look, you mentioned the coalition, sticking together. Is that really, what's at threat here? This coalition could collapse any minute. The ultra-Orthodox may leave the government. It seemed that despite all the posturing, they're not about to leave, that this seems more about positioning ahead of the next round of elections. Where's the Prime Minister? Where's Prime Minister Netanyahu on this issue?
First of all, it's really a long journey they've made from the beginning of this coalition. It's already 3 years.
Almost full term. Yeah, full term, pretty much.
Almost full term. And along these years, they threat and again, and collapsing the coalition. And they're still there because they doesn't have real other alternative. And the other alternative might be much more threatening for them and much more effective in recruiting them to the army. But their supporters and the ultra-Orthodox community is pushing hard, and through the years and promised again and again. And Netanyahu also promised them to bring this law to the Knesset that will enable them to get the budget they're losing and some exemptions from the draft. So the pressure is mounting by the community and by the supporters of the ultra-Orthodox and by the rabbis. Now, where does it go? It's really hard to assess because as you mentioned before, there are many coalition members that today may declare that they are not going to support this law. But on the other hand, experience demonstrates that by the time Prime Minister is pushing them, especially the member of Likud, and their pressure from the side of the Prime Minister and the members usually push them back to align with the coalition and support the law. So it's really hard to assess, but I can tell you, I can assure you that there will be a tremendous protests and demonstrations against law if it goes forward, because the soldiers, the Miluim services that coming from the field, coming from Gaza, coming from the north, and made hundreds of years of their services along these years, 2 years, will not let the government and its supporters to easily pass this law. So it's really hard to define, but my perspective and my also, I think, hope for the state of Israel is that the law would not pass, and the next government will be able to pass a much better law for the sake of security and the resilience of the state of Israel.
Yeah, national cohesion. Stay with us, Dr. Friedman. Another topic to bring your way here, and it's the specter of parliamentary elections that we mentioned here in our chat. It's in the air in Israel. Another hot-button political issue has emerged. Reports are swirling around Prime Minister Netanyahu's request for a pardon from President Herzog. That's in his ongoing corruption trial. The pressure campaign also mounting around him. Herzog delivered statements expressing his position on this delicate matter.
סוגיית הפנייה לחנינה של ראש הממשלה בנימין נתניהו On the issue of the pardon application by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, it's clear to me that it's causing a stir among many people and is sparking arguments. I've said and clarified that it will be dealt with in the most correct way possible, the most precise way possible. I will consider only the good of the country and Israeli society. It's clear to me, though, violent discourse will not influence me. On the contrary, while respectable discourse will generate discussions. And I invite the Israeli public to the presidency website to express its opinion and respond accordingly.
And Dr. Friedman's still with us on this. Look, we've read about various scenarios. We see maybe we're not clear where the president stands on this, but we've read about the various scenarios. One, Netanyahu is pardoned. He's clear to push forward politically. Number two, Netanyahu is mired in court testimonies and continues with this. This is all hanging over his coming election campaign. Or the prime minister's pardoned but required to walk away from politics at the same time. Are there other scenarios in play? Which are most viable at this point, in your opinion?
First of all, legally, currently at least, the president is authorized to pardon only a person who has been defined offender. Now, Prime Minister in his appeal to the president actually denied being offending any crime, and therefore, formally at least, for now, the president can pardon him. But the more important thing is why Netanyahu is appealing to the pardon now, and I think it has to relate to the other subjects we just mentioned before, the drug law and the storm around it. I think Netanyahu trying to attract the attention of the public to another issue, and this way to pass the draft law and to be able to actually have a full storm around the support in his pardon one hand and the draft law on the other hand. Now, per the pardon request and the decision of the president, as you analyze correctly, these are the major scenarios. It's really hard to assess what the president will decide. But I think the majority of the public, and we have seen it in our polls, in JPPI polls, the Israeli Society Index, the majority of the Israelis are objecting a full pardon without any conditions. So I think the reasonable scenario is that Herzog will take a decision of pardoning Netanyahu, but put some condition on his decision, like retiring from politics, or restricting his cadences to 2 years or something. So I think it will be very hard legally and morally for a full pardon by Herzog, and I think the majority of the public, except of the Netanyahu supporters, will go against it.
Well, we will certainly see. We'll stay tuned on this one. Dr. Shuki Friedman, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.